We now return to the Peter Schiff Show.
Call in now, 855-4-SCHIF.
That's 855-472-4433.
Rebel Radio, the Peter Schiff Show.
Joining the program now is retired veterinary doctor Ronald Hines, along with his lawyer. And, Dr. Hines, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show. Dr. Hines, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Peter.
All right, well, welcome to the show. And let me give a little bit background on you to my listeners. I know you're a 69-year-old. You're a retired veterinarian. You have a Ph.D., I guess, in veterinary medicine. And I think you're physically disabled, and that's what led to your retirement from active practice?
Yes, Peter, I do have some health issues, but I still love my work, and my life still revolves around veterinary medicine, pets, and pet owners.
Yeah, now I understand that at some point you decided to open kind of a website on the Internet where people who have pets could contact you if their pets were sick, and they would let you know what the symptoms were. I don't know, maybe you used video too as well, maybe Skype, I don't know, but they were contacting you and you were giving them advice as to what they could do. You'd help them diagnose the ailment of their pet, and you would give them some advice as to what they could do to try to help their pet regain its health, correct?
Yes, I try to give them advice, things that I've learned over the many years I've been doing this.
Yeah, and you're charging for the advice?
I'll answer any email I get. Some people do pay me. I'd say less than half of them.
And what do they pay you?
Well, I believe my last price was $58, and for that I'd look at every X-ray, blood work, and we'd talk on the telephone, and I might put in a month or two on a case.
Yeah. And, you know, probably some people who are contacting you, because you're talking about people from all around the world, correct?
Yes, Peter.
Yeah, so there are probably people that have sick pets where they don't even have access to a veterinarian. There's no vets around, and it's either ask their neighbor or ask you, right?
Yeah, yes. An awful lot of my clients just don't have access to veterinarians, and those in the United States are some that are homebound just like I am, and there are also people who just can't afford it. They have to make a choice between their health and their pets.
And you're very experienced, right? Because you worked with exotic animals, you worked at SeaWorld, you researched primates, right? You're not just knowledgeable on dogs and cats, for example, but you have expertise in a wide range of animals, correct?
Yes, I've been very fortunate in my experience.
So you're a learned guy, you know your subject. It seems like this is a great situation for everybody because you're retired, but rather than wasting all that knowledge and experience, you're using it to benefit other people all around the world. Maybe poorer people don't have a lot of money or don't have access to vets, but have pets that they care about. They're able, it sounds like it's a win-win for everybody. And how has been your success rate? Have you really been able to help people nurse their animals back to health where the animal might not have survived were it not for the help that you gave their owners?
I truly believe I've helped more pet owners and pets through my internet connections than I did in 40 years of running my own animal hospital.
Are any of your customers or people that you're sometimes you're not charging? Is anybody complaining, or is anybody complaining that your advice is no good or malpractice? Are there any lawsuits against you or complaints from your customers to government agencies?
Not to my knowledge. Now, I'm sure not everyone agrees with my conclusions, and that's fine. But I try to treat everyone and give them advice as if the pet were my pet and I was in their situation.
Yeah, look, it sounds like it's a very, again, a noble effort that you're doing. It sounds like it's a win-win for everybody. But unfortunately, right, the state of Texas has shut you down, and they fined you, and are they threatening you with imprisonment?
Well, I don't know about the prison. But they are very aggressive, and they said they'll be watching me closely, scrutinizing my activities, and I'm quite fearful of their activity. I have not answered a pet health email since I received their initial letter about a year ago, maybe a year and a month.
So they basically ordered you to cease and desist, and they said that you cannot give any advice on any matters to any pet owners.
It's been strictly secondhand information. They are not willing to share much detail with me, but through pet owners that have corresponded with them, I've been told that the president of the board, Ms. Araya, has said I may not venture an opinion on any pet health subject, either by phone or over the internet, short of a person driving here to Brownsville, Texas, and knocking on my door.
And that's even if there's no money that changes hands. So somebody cannot call you as an individual who's concerned about their pet, ask you what to do, and you're not allowed to give them your opinion.
That's my understanding.
Now, you're not even a licensed a veterinarian right now, right? You're retired, so you're just one individual giving advice to another individual who happened to ask for it, and they're basically saying that it's illegal for you. I guess anybody. I guess if somebody called me up if I lived in Texas and had a sick hamster and asked me what I should do about it, I can't give them my opinion.
As I understand it, you're right. That is technically true. And incidentally, I am a licensed veterinarian. I just paid my fee. I've paid it every year.
I wonder if that makes it worse. I know I've got your attorney on the line, Jeff Rose. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter.
Hey, so does the fact that Dr. Hines is still licensed, is that what's subjecting him to this Texas law? If he renounced his license, if he was just an ordinary citizen who had no veterinary license, would he be allowed to give out this advice?
No, not at all. Then he would be guilty of the crime of providing veterinary advice without a license. So,
but
go ahead.
Yes, but even if it's free.
Even if it's free, it doesn't matter.
I don't understand. We're talking about animals here, right? So this is not like, if he gives out a bad recommendation or bad advice, a human being dies. We're talking about dogs and cats, maybe gerbils, hamsters, goldfish. I mean, what's the big deal? If I got a sick goldfish and I call up Dr. Hines, and even if he gives me the wrong advice and my goldfish dies, what's the big deal? I mean, I'm an adult. I own a goldfish. I don't know what to do. I'm not taking my goldfish to a vet. So I call up Dr. Hines. He tells me to do something. What's the big deal if it doesn't work?
There is no big deal. And, this case is about free speech. It is about one grown adult talking to another grown adult on a subject that they mutually want to discuss. And that's why we filed a major First Amendment lawsuit, and we're going to use the First Amendment to transform how advice is disseminated. That's what this case is about, and it has implications beyond veterinary medicine.
Yeah, and I think, Texas will pride itself on a small government state. And to me, all this is about protectionism for the vets, because the vets don't want people to be able to give out advice. This law basically says you cannot give advice unless somebody physically brings their animal to the doctor so that the doctor can examine it. And the reason for that is so the vet can charge an office visit, and it's probably much, much higher than the $58 that your client is charging. It's all about protecting the income streams of veterinarians, and it's anti-consumers, it's anti-free choice, and it's certainly anti-freedom of association and free speech.
Absolutely. And it's no coincidence that Texas adopted this law in 2005. They adopted the model language from the American Veterinary Medical Association, which is the umbrella professional group that they wrote in 2003. And where did all of this concern for animals getting advice come from? Well, the Internet suddenly made it possible to get information and advice about pets more cheaply, better, faster, quicker, more effectively. And Texas decided, we better outlaw that. And Dr. Hines and all of the consumers he helps are a victim of that.
And, I like the fact that people could use him. Let's say you go to a doctor and he x-rays your pet or does something and he gives you recommends something. Isn't it good that he basically provides a second opinion for $58? You can email him your x-rays, your diagnosis. He can look at it and he can say, yeah, I concur with this other vet. Or maybe he can say, look, the vet is wrong. And it makes it easier for people to shop around and get those second opinions.
Exactly. And alternatively, Dr. Hines is a licensed veterinarian. He is entrusted to exercise professional judgment. There are many instances in which he'll look at the situation and say, you know what, under the circumstances, I can't provide you with reliable advice. You have to go see a vet in person. In fact, he sends people in emergency situations to the vet immediately. And it's crazy for Texas to treat his advice online as though he's just somebody who doesn't know what he's talking about and has to be completely prohibited from offering an opinion.
Yeah. Now, is this just in Texas? If Dr. Hines were to move to another state, would he be able to continue what he's doing?
No. About 34 states have laws that are basically the same. Maybe another 10 regulate somewhat less intensely, and then there are just a small handful that don't regulate this at all.
So there are some states. What are the states that he could go to?
Maine, for example, regulates less. But the problem for Dr. Hines, it isn't just where he goes, because he gives advice to people all across the United States as well. And, the Internet is fundamentally a interjurisdictional phenomenon.
Oh, so what you're saying is even if he was practicing or, running his website in one of the few states that allows this, he could not give advice to people, for example, who lived in Texas, because then he'd be violating Texas law from another state?
Right, potentially. Like basically what we have here in psychology, in veterinary medicine, in human medicine, and even in law is a regulatory framework that was designed in the 19th century where every state regulated its own business as though there were very little interaction with other states. The Internet has fundamentally changed that. It is possible for anyone, anywhere to instantly communicate with anyone else.
And rather than allowing us enjoy the benefit of progress, you've got the government trying to, turn back the clock and resist those tides. But I want to talk a little bit more about it after this particular break, especially since, I was under the impression that maybe these laws were enacted because of the Internet to try to protect the vets. But you're saying that these laws have been around for a long time, and it has nothing to do with the introduction of the Internet. So we'll talk about that and hear more from Dr. Hines after this break. So don't go away.
Schiff Radio continues right now.
We're talking with retired veterinary Dr. Ronald Hines, as well as his attorney, Jeff Rose. And the reason that Dr. Hines needs an attorney is because the state of Texas shut down his online veterinary practice, where Dr. Hines was using his years and years of experience as a veterinarian to help benefit people all around the world that had sick pets and either lacked the resources, lacked the funds to take care of them, needed some advice. And Dr. Hines was more than happy to provide that advice, in many cases absolutely free, and in some cases for just a nominal fee, certainly a fee far less than any veterinarian would charge just to allow you to bring your pet to their office. This question is for Jeff. Before the break, you mentioned that you thought that the laws were older and they didn't necessarily take into account these new technology. But didn't Texas actually pass a law in 2005 specifically designed to prevent people from doing exactly what Dr. Hines is doing, dispensing veterinary advice over the Internet?
Yes, exactly. So Texas passed this law in 2005 to reinforce this old regulatory model where everything is done on a state-by-state basis. And, Texas reacts, like many states, reacts to innovation, new ideas, new efficiencies, new improvements with regulation designed to destroy that and to destroy it for the benefit.
What was the old law? What did the old law require?
Well, basically, the old law was ambiguous as to whether you actually needed to go in and see a vet in order to allow that vet to render an opinion. In 2005, because Internet sources of veterinary information had proliferated and that physical visits to traditional brick-and-mortar vets were in decline, Texas, following the Veterinary Medical Association, decided to pass this law, as many other states did, making it clear that you cannot use just the internet or a telephone or anything in order to provide veterinary advice.
So, but even doctors, I mean, a lot of times I call up my doctor on the phone and I ask him for some advice. I describe my symptoms, and the doctor doesn't always require me to come down to the office. He'll say, okay, do this or do that. So you're saying that a doctor can do it, but if someone calls up the vet and says, hey, I got to, my pet is acting weird, you got to bring it in. They can't say anything. All they can say is you got to bring it in. And what if they don't have an appointment available? What if they're, you got to wait another day or two? Or
That's right. Actually, there are instances in which veterinary regulation is stricter than medical regulation. And in fact, this is a problem in the medical field where there are huge benefits to be had from using the internet. And there are all kinds of unsettled questions about whether or not, for example, somebody in Washington State can talk to a doctor in the state of Florida. Is the doctor violating Washington State's
But none of this
laws?
makes any sense, because when you're dealing with human beings, that's a different thing. But, if I got a sick parakeet, I mean, even if I decided to euthanize my parakeet on my own, I wouldn't go to jail. I'm allowed to kill a parakeet. I mean, so if I could kill my parakeet, why can't I ask somebody for advice on how to treat it?
Well, that's perfectly logical. And in fact, the extension of that is also that Dr. Hines helps people in developing countries who have no access to veterinary care. And so Texas is saying those people have to go entirely without veterinary care rather than talk to Dr. Hines on the internet. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense that you're talking about people that are physically incapable of bringing the pet in. I could understand if somebody was calling, although I couldn't understand it, I still think it's wrong, but if somebody that lived in Dr. Hines' neighborhood was maybe a 10-minute drive from his home or his office, he could obviously bring the pet in. But if he's talking to somebody in Mongolia who's got a sick snake or something, and he obviously can't transport the snake to Texas. So even in that respect, when a physical visit is impossible, because clearly that isn't hurting competition among the other brick and mortar vets that might be losing business, because there's no way that guy could even come to Texas.
No, and this is just the logic of the bureaucrat. It's just inflexible. These laws are inflexible, and there are people all across the country and all over the world who have beloved pets who aren't getting care because Texas has arbitrarily shut Dr. Hines down, and we're going to stop them.
And so tell me, what is the status right now of where is the lawsuit right now?
So we just filed in federal court in Brownsville down in southern Texas, and so we have to litigate in the trial court. But a case like either this case or another case very much like it is going to go up to the Supreme Court within the next few years, because the constitutional status of advice, namely one-to-one discussions, is unclear, and the conflict between free speech and the government's traditional power to license occupations is also in direct conflict here in a way that really hasn't existed before.
So do you think would your case have broader implications regarding occupational licensing in general? Because I always thought that people have a right to work, they have a right to engage in a trade without the government sanctioning it. And of course that even goes to lawyers. I mean, if you're a lawyer, you can't represent somebody unless the government it approves it, unless you're licensed by the bar. Even if somebody who knows that I'm not a lawyer, if they want me to represent them, it's not legal.
That's right. And, law is a classic speaking profession. And so, the way law might interact with the free speech clause of the First Amendment is going to be different than how free speech applies to veterinary medicine. But the bottom line principle we're making in this case is free speech protects speech, and advice is speech. That is protected. And we're going to go to the Supreme Court if it's necessary to vindicate that right.
Yeah. Are you doing this pro bono, or is Dr. Hines paying you for your services?
Oh, no. I'm a senior attorney with the Institute for Justice. We take all of our cases pro bono. We're based in Arlington, Virginia, just across from the river from Washington, D.C., and we have chapters across the country. And we represent people in strategic constitutional litigation designed to protect their rights.
Doctor,
and
yeah.
the rights
Well,
of everyone.
wish you luck. Dr. Hines, I really appreciate what you're doing. I feel bad that the ordeal that you've been going through. I hope that you're allowed to continue to practice veterinary medicine online at some point. In fact, you know, we have a sick cat. If I'd have known about your services, maybe we could have given you a call.
Well, perhaps I will be able to help you someday, Peter. Let's hope.
Yeah, you're a good man. I appreciate your work, sir. Everybody else, Hour 2 of the Peter Schiff Show coming up next. We will be right back.